6:32 p.m. Pursuant to open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions may be made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Roll call of school committee members present. Ms. Andrews?
Present.
Mrs. Gagliardi?
Present.
Mr. Goff?
Present.
Mr. Machado? Mr. Pierce?
Present.
Ms. Vincent?
Present.
Mr. Machado, yes. Also, and myself, Rich Fenton, English Chair. Also with us, Superintendent of Schools, Jeffrey Schoonover, Director of Business and Finance, Mr. Ronald Caro, Director of Curriculum, Ms. Elizabeth Haskell, Director of Special Education, Ms. Megan Ashton. And then we have high school principal, Dr. Brelsford. And also joining us tonight are town administrator from Berkeley, Ms. Sterling. Megan Sterling.
Heather Martin Sterling.
Sorry, Heather.
That's okay.
Dean Larrabee with the Board of Selectmen from Berkeley and members of the advisory council. Thank you all for being here. Most importantly, our recording secretary, Robin Caro, is here. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerset Berkeley Regional High School Committee will be on Tuesday, April 26, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. in the Somerset Berkeley Regional Library. First item we have up here is our 6:30 our public hearing on the 2022-23 school budget. It will be published. Oh, sorry.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We have our 6:30 p.m. public hearing on the 2022-2023 school budget. This has been duly published as a public hearing. This time, I'd like Mrs. Spinelli.
Sure. Thank you. I think everyone has a copy of the presentation, which we're also going to get up on the board. Just a minute. Everyone in the audience, you all have a copy? Okay. So Mr. Taro will walk us through most of this, but just to start out, you can see just the steps that we'll go through for the agenda tonight, the various aspects of the budget that we'll discuss. We're starting out, as we typically do, with just what our district's strategic objectives are, so that we can just remind ourselves what it is we are all here about and what our path for improvement is. So you can see those objectives on slide 3 of the presentation. Next, just some of the things that we always consider as we go through this process, not just the administration, but certainly speaking on behalf of our budget subcommittee as well. We understand the financial challenges of our towns, and we are mindful of that throughout the entire process. As I was just saying, we also look at our district strategy and knowing what actions and objectives we want for our students, continuously improve what we have here. That's also always driving our conversations and our thinking. And just as more of a footnote, obviously everything we've experienced the past couple of years, just a reference here to the pandemic, there has been this uncertainty, and we are seeing things this year that we typically still would not. With students coming back after what last year looked like, and the year before, the spring before, there are some challenges that all schools are facing this year that are a little new. So we're still dealing with with everything related to the pandemic from March of 2020 through really early of this fall. Excuse me. With that, you can see from the next couple of slides, it's just the budgeting process. I certainly will not go over these line by line, but you can just see from where we started, all the meetings that took place, first with high school administration, with those sitting to my right, with content coordinators at the high school, all of those meetings, plus everything was happening with the budget subcommittee and the full school committee along the way. Just want to note the last few on slide 6 here in March. On March 8th, and per regional agreement, the budget subcommittee unanimously approved an FY23 preliminary budget. That was approved last week by the majority of the committee, I think a 5-2 vote, if I'm not mistaken, which leads us to the presentation this evening. Some of the drivers, obviously we know, and Mr. Taro can speak about the actual percentage of this budget that is connected to staffing, but you can see the various contracts that we've negotiated and where the status is of each of those. So a couple expiring at the end of the FY23 school year, a few others going FY24. Mr. Taro, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I mean, just having the contracts in place, it helps prepare a budget early enough so that we can kind of drill through and know what we're going to be. So we have another year of knowing, we have some knowns instead of some unknowns when we talk about the budget. So it's good to have those in place.
One thing I want to note on this slide about the enrollment changes, and we've seen that, I assume most people here have seen the assessment sheet, and we've seen this decrease of enrollment by 24 students for Somerset, by 18 students in Berkeley. That is based on the October 1st, 2021 enrollment. It's not a projected enrollment for next year. The assessment is based on the October 1st, 2021. So really it's based on the enrollment from the previous year to determine what the percentage of the assessments would be the following year. So it isn't a projected enrollment. We're actually projecting more students next year in the high school than we currently have, based on the large class sizes that we have in 8th grade at both Berkeley Middle and Somerset Middle. I believe, I know at Somerset Middle School we currently have 231 8th graders. At Berkeley Middle they have 112 8th graders. Together, that's the biggest pool of students we've seen coming out of 8th grade into the freshman year. So obviously some of those students go to Bristol Aggie, Bristol Plymouth, Diamond, private schools, but we are expecting somewhere between 260 270 students, incoming freshmen coming in. So that is larger than our current senior class. And just another note here about special education tuitions. You'll see that there aren't any significant changes between FY22 and FY23 with overall out-of-district tuitions. On the next slide, just a couple other considerations that we have to make when planning this budget. One was driven by the Student Opportunity Act. I submitted a plan 2 years ago to the state using that increase in Chapter 70 funding. With the plan, and this was based on looking at our school data and the achievement gaps that exist between various subgroups, and also collecting feedback from staff and families, just guiding exactly how we're to use that increase in funding through Chapter 70. Some of the things that we added a few years ago and we're going to continue to support in the FY23 budget is a reading specialist. That was something that was actually identified really in the next section below from a tiered focused monitoring report and study that was done a few years back. We are continuing to, we expanded our co-teaching model last year using those SOA funds, and we're maintaining that extra staffing position that was added, as well as providing professional development to support our teachers in the co-teaching model that was going on this year and that will continue next year. We continue to expand capstone projects here at the high school, as well as supporting the innovation pathways and Project Lead the Way. So our Student Opportunity Act plan was driven about closing achievement gaps for our highest needs students, as well as better preparing students for college and careers, which is really what the capstone and innovation pathways components are. So we're continuing to fund those with the increased funding in Chapter 7. And as I just mentioned, the tiered focus monitoring, not only did that identify the need for a reading specialist, but also in-school suspension, which we added this year as on a part-time basis of about 0.4, 2 days per week staff member. Mr. Tyler, anything? Okay. Just some other considerations on the next slide. Obviously, we're constantly evaluating our student activities between fees that are collected and what our needs are for those. Looking every year is what we have is driven by enrollments, not just our overall enrollment, but enrollments in our courses. We did look, Mr. Tarr, do you want to just talk about the E&D component?
Yeah, sure. So each year we have to get our E&D certified, as some of you may be aware. Our E&D certification is then determined based on the use of those funds through the school committee approval. The school committee did approve recently some use of E&D to be allocated into transferred into the OPEB fund to start nipping away at the unfunded liability in that account. And the OPEB subcommittee is a pretty active group now, so it's good to see that going in the right direction. In addition to that, we're using some E&D funds to purchase some technology, and by doing so, we're able to actually reduce the operating budget to make those. I know we call them one-time expenditures, but we typically, because of the way technology is, every 5-year cycle we're going to be replacing them, so they're not really one-time expenditures. We usually get a 5-year useful life out of them. So that was actually helped us actually bring this budget more aligned to a more reasonable increase. And then at the end of the year, we'll look at E&D one more time to see if there's any additional money that can be transferred, maybe to OPEB. We're looking at projections as far as our revenue sources, what our expenditures are trending right now, what savings we may have. But our effort is we always try to utilize federal grant funds first, use those first, draw those down, and relieve the operating budget, because that's the intent of those federal grants. So if we have a positive variance or projected surplus within the operating budget, then we'll figure out if we can do some more transfer before the end of the year. So the E&D, again, once again, is certified at the end of the year. It's good through the end of the year, so we have to make sure we use that within a timely manner, or it has to be reset at the end of the year through the Department of Revenue.
Thank you. Impact, we do look at the impact of school choice, and in fact, following the public hearing and public comment, when under the discussion and consideration item of the budget, we will have an update at that point. Mr. Taro actually just shared an email with me first thing this morning about an email we received from DESE showing us what the current FY22 school choice is. So we're able to actually make some adjustments based on those current numbers to plan for FY23, which actually is favorable to the assessments of both districts. But that'll come after the hearing.
Yeah, sure. This is a first glance when we start the budget process. You always put all your cards on the table, figure out where we're going from a budget standpoint. We try not to look at what the increases are, but we look at what the needs are based on the student population, based on the programs. And we put everything into the budget, and then we start analyzing that based on the information received from the content coordinators, information received from the principal. Central office will take a look at that based on our objectives, meeting the strategic plan goals and student needs. Through this process, we then ratchet down the budget. We do that when we meet with the content coordinators. We look at the specific questions. The questions we ask is, number one, do you need it? is there another funding source that we can cover that expenditure in, either through a grant title fund or some type of special grant? And then, can we purchase it now so we don't need to purchase it next year? So we go through that exercise, and then we look at the current fiscal year budget to see what the requests were to make sure they're not asking for the same thing and they didn't purchase it this year. So we go through that exercise and we make sure that we're utilizing the money that's allocated for us. We're also making sure that if we can buy it, we'll buy it now, so we're not adding additional money to the operating budget. So through that process, we've identified some savings. Then we start through the budget process with the budget subcommittee. They will ask a number of questions. They'll want more detailed information. Through that process, we've reduced the budget by $580,000 through February 13th. Additional meetings took place, and then most recently on March 8th, there was some additional reductions based on some FTE requests, total another $70,000. We eliminated and reduced some of the positions, but we also had to increase the budget because we received our medical insurance working rate. And that actually happened that Friday, I believe, before the public, before the school committee meeting. I believe it the 18th. So we had to make these adjustments as we're going along. And so since then, we've actually made almost a $650,000 reduction in the operating budget from the beginning when we handed the budget over to the budget subcommittee. So the initial budget was $18,719, the net operating budget that excludes the capital assessment for debt service payments, principal and interest. So we got to this point where the operating budget, after all the adjustments, is a $18,068,452 net operating budget with the capital assessment of $2,176,648. The gross budget is $20,245,100. That's the preliminary adjusted budget to date, and that's what was approved by the school committee last week. The net operating budget's a $582,000 increase over the current fiscal year, or 3.23%, of which $738,000 are kind of fixed expenses through contracts or some additional positions that are included in the budget to meet certain student needs. We made some reductions in out-of-district tuition, textbooks, technology, and with the use of circuit breaker funds. We actually use some additional circuit breaker funds we have. We want to make sure we utilize those as soon as possible so we don't lose those funds. And that actually was able to bring the budget down more in line to where we think is somewhat of a reasonable level. Chapter 70 is also projected to increase by $530,000. So in essence, you're looking at a net budget increase of $52,000 based on the new revenue. I don't know if there's any questions, or I should just keep flying right through this. Okay.
Now, I do want to note that the last bullet on that, as I just alluded to a few minutes ago, that was already in the presentation. We should have removed that early today because that is, based on the information we just received, that's not accurate.
It's no longer relatively flat, but it's going in the right direction. Very high level of the areas, I call them function areas, function codes, or categories. Here's the total operating budget. The increase $582,000. You see some adjustments, and I talked about those in the previous slide. There's more detail behind this, but for this presentation, we keep it at a higher level. The one that we want to just kind of take a look at is the medical insurance for employees is up. Rate was approved, I believe it was a 5%, 2% increase for the various groups. That's reflected in here. So we have a $55,000 increase. The majority of that is related to medical insurance and rate renewals. This is a, if you don't know, this is a self-insured pool arrangement with the town of Somerset. That includes both the Somerset Public Schools and the Somerset Berkeley Regional School employees. The regular transportation has a significant increase, but it's mostly related to the homeless transportation. We've seen a significant number of increases in homeless transportation, and this reflects a significant increase based on our experiences right now. We do our best to utilize the vans we have in district to cover some of those costs and provide the transportation, but it's almost impossible when we're trying to service both districts with the vans we have. The educational supply piece, there is no major curriculum adjustments or increases. There's just increases in what we project to be normal increases based on the supply chain, based on the cost of delivery, and it's somewhat of a realistic number, but it's an adjusted number based on when we originally started, and that's been adjusted to date. And then I'm working from the bottom up because I want to go to the highest number, which is the salaries, as we presented on one of the slides. It is, this does include all the contractual obligations in addition to a few positions that we're requesting to meet some student needs in the transition program. Mrs. Ashton has been working with the school administration and a teacher within that program. So the $537,000 is in addition to a couple of FTEs that we're requesting. The capital assessment is relatively flat. The way the debt service is structured, it's a level principal and interest payments over the term of the bonds until a bond is paid off, and then you see a decline in the debt service payments unless there are new debt issued. Sometimes you're used to seeing a level principal payment with interest payments declining over the term of the bonds. In this particular structure, it was level debt service payments with principal and interest. So the total operating budget is 2.96% increase over the FY23. The number presented here, the FY22 dollar amount, $19,622,000, is the actual approved budget. It does not include the approval of the use of E&D funds. The use of E&D funds actually increases the operating budget. But if I did that, then this budget would be artificially lower because we're increasing the FY22 budget. We felt that it was more transparent representation of what the approved budget was to the presented FY23 budget. This is a graphical slide. This kind of identifies where special ed is and where the money is being spent. We utilize for special education out of district tuition, we utilize three funding sources. One is the operating budget, one is the circuit breaker funds, and the other one is IDEA, which is a special education federal program funds. And we basically allocate those across each of those funding sources. When we look at the operating budget, that's a net operating budget because these expenditures are captured within those various funds. But this gives you a true picture of what the total cost of those special education special ed out of district tuitions. I had mentioned the transportation piece. This is just a summary of transportation where the increases are. You'll see that the homeless transportation is up by $75,000. The other increases, and I'm just going to start off at the top, which is the out of district. That's contracted services. That's what the provider that provides transportation typically out of district and some transportation in district for special education children. The in-district transportation is our staffing and costs associated with running the special ed transportation, in addition to the operational costs of the vans, which would be maintenance and repairs, tires, brakes, oil changes, and increased cost for gasoline. We increased this budget by almost $20,000 in anticipation of where the direction of gas prices are going. It was aggressively increased. We increased it one time, and then we saw the rates going up again, and we increased it again. So I don't want to say fingers crossed, but I mean, it's a $20,000 increase in just fuel charges. We hope that the fuel will level off a little bit, and we'll monitor that. If it doesn't, then we know we'll be tracking this budget to make sure we meet we stay within budget, within the total budget. And then the regular routes is just a contractual increase. If the rates are increased by the contract just recently approved by both school committees, then we'll be continuing with that program. Next one is, again, the debt service. You'll see that,
Can you just tell us why homeless transportation increased from 0 to 75,000 in 1 year?
I will tell you that I didn't have anything budgeted in FY22. We weren't experiencing the increased transportation costs for homeless that we were in FY22 when I was preparing FY22.
So what is our projected expenditure for 22?
Off the top of my head, I don't. Right now, we're approaching $38,000 projected. So, I'm just going to jump back to the debt service payments. This is pretty straightforward. These are the bonds, and when they were issued, we do monitor the call provisions. Thanks to Mr. Larrabee giving us the details behind. They do have details behind this as far as taking advantage of lower interest rates. Interest rates are going in a different direction right now, so we'll still monitor that, and there may be opportunities we go down the road, but we know when we have call provisions and we may be able to refinance those bonds and lower the interest rate and save a little money on the principal, on the interest payments. Next section is our revenue sources, and this is at a very high level what we were projecting. As I mentioned, that Chapter 70, based on the Department of Education, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, $530,000 were projected to receive an additional money. As you can see, the assessment is a $52,000 increase to the member communities. Right? The increase in member communities, and we'll go through the detail a little bit, but how it shifts is not just a true flat $52,000 allocation. The other revenue that I had mentioned is the use of these federal funds and other miscellaneous funds that help support the operating budget. That totals $1,594,000. That money helps offset the total gross operating budget, and that is used to actually lower the impact of the taxpayers. So that's where we bring down from $19,622,000, using almost $1.6 million, brings the preliminary gross operating budget down to $18,068,000, which was previously presented. I just noticed a little bit of an error here because this really should be, that 500 and, I don't know if I can do this, but this 542,000 should really read 582,000 because I backed out the 40,000 from initially approval of the E&D for the OPEB fund. So just that number on top is wrong, but the numbers on the bottom of the graph are correct.
Correct on mine.
Is it?
Correct, 582.
The 582?
582. Do you have 582?
I get the old version.
Yeah.
We're trying to save paper, I don't want to print it again.
I'll take that.
Okay. So here's the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education determine how the foundation money is distributed. I'll be happy to go through the detail of this, but in essence, there's some factors that they take into consideration, which is, I would call it, they call it the wealth factor. They'll look at poverty levels, they'll look at the type of student population that they'll be servicing, and then they'll determine what the minimum education foundation should be. In this particular case, it's $13,192,000. they then factor in a percentage, and they apply that percentage to determine what our funding portion is for the Chapter 70 funding. In this particular case, if, I know you probably can see it better on that, but if we look at right here, this area right here, that 13,192,000 times a factor of 49.91% gives you this 6,584,000, which is the money that we'll be receiving for FY23 to operate to fund that portion of the operating budget increase in Chapter 70 funding. We'll talk a little bit about the minimum local contribution. Kind of an odd year as the Department of Ed determines what the minimum local contribution is for each of the member communities. Based on this most recent report that they present us, and that's how we develop our budget, the Berkeley MLC is increasing by 30,000, and conversely, the Somerset MLC is being reduced by 54,000. So they're basically going in opposite directions. Mrs. Schoonover did speak to some enrollment changes, and that's really how we look at Chapter 70 funding. They look at the enrollment, and looking at the enrollment changes, in this particular case, Berkeley's share of Chapter 70 is based on a percentage of enrollment. FY22, they had a percentage of 26.86%. That carries through the operating budget and determines what the assessment, the operating budget assessment is, and also the capital assessment. Based on the shift in enrollment, Berkeley's percentage went to 26.17%, almost, I want to call it 0.75%, 70 basis points, which resulted in a little bit smaller decrease in their portion of the Chapter 70. Conversely, it also had a favorable impact on Berkeley in that the percentage allocated to the assessment for capital actually went down by 15,000 because their percentage went down, so their allocation for the share went down. So proportionally, their Berkeley's share went down by about 15,000, the Somerset share went up by about $15,000. The total assessment right now at preliminary budget, as you see it, Berkeley will increase by 112,000 or 3.44%. That's the total assessment. That includes both the operating assessment and the capital assessment. And then Somerset is actually decreasing by 60,000 or 0.6%. The next is it's even small for me with my glasses on, but basically all the numbers that I went through are plugged into the formula. This formula is what was agreed to under the regional agreement. We carry this formula over on a yearly basis. We look at what FY20 is, 22 is, and we compare that to FY23. Some of the areas that I would point out is, let's see if I can see it here, is the MLC, which is step 2 right here. Here's where I was talking about Berkeley's MLC is increasing and Somerset's is actually decreasing, which is going in opposite directions. Then we go through this whole calculation. We allocate the Chapter 70 funds. We first, at the top of this, we back out the transportation fees to capital assessment in the out-of-district per the regional agreement. We calculate these allocations, and then, after we calculate the net total operating assessment, we then take the number, we calculate on the bottom how the special ed is allocated. This is per the agreement, and then those numbers based on the students that are receiving out-of-district placement are plugged into the specific member communities. And then they're paying the dollar-for-dollar value of the out-of-district tuition for those students. Yes.
On the first part of the formula, and I think I just can't find where the number is. I can't see what the line is, but right at the start at step 1, it says total operating budget, and we're at 20,245,100, right?
Correct.
And then it says total transportation cost of 1,126,579. But when I went to look at that number, on the page 16 of the presentation, it looks like it's 1,202,179. But I might be missing something.
I didn't include the, I don't believe I included the homeless transportation piece.
Okay, okay,
Because it's just our homeless transportation.
okay.
So
All right,
if
so
you add
that's
the
where this is.
75,000 and change, I think it comes to the dollar. Good, good. Wow. I thought you guys were going to throw me some curveballs tonight.
It's early yet.
You're only on step 1.
Okay. I'd be happy to go through each of these steps if the school committee would like. I think what I would do is basically, I'm going to jump to the second page of the assessment calculation, but I think it shows the numbers right here of what we were talking about in the previous slides, which is Somerset's allocation or assessments going down by 60,000, and Berkeley's going up by 113,000. That is the result of increasing the MLC for Berkeley, losing a little bit of the percentage of the Chapter 70 because of the shift in the percentage allocation, and then an increase in their portion of the special education piece. So those components in itself, if you back those out, it would probably be a relatively flat impact to the Berkeley member community. So I think that's kind of important because as we dove into this, we were looking at it, it wasn't making sense to us. And they were trying to figure out why the numbers would shift so much until we broke it down piece by piece, and that's what we were able to identify. What's that? Any other questions? The next few slides, are just a representation of our trends, historical changes for the net operating budget. Tells you where we're at as far as 582,000. There's nothing new there. I think last year was an anomaly. We looked at how we shifted. We had a lot of special education students transfer from grade 8 into the high school last year. We've now leveled that off. Mrs. Ashton and her team are looking at, providing services within district and trying to keep that as level as we can. The reality is we can only control that so much. There's only so many services we can provide in district, and it's a fluid number. It's a fluid number now through the end of the school year and even going into the beginning of the school year. But we've done our best, and Mrs. Ashton has done her best to kind of keep that number where as reasonable as possible. The next slide is total operating assessment, and this is just a percentage allocation, and I just applied a per pupil dollar amount just so you can see a comparison. And that's towards the bottom over here. It basically takes the total assessment and go, okay, what's the population, and what's based on your own, what's the number. You'll notice that basically Berkeley's per pupil compared to Somerset's is still trending a little bit below Somerset's. Berkeley's is almost about $700, $650 less. Doesn't make it any better because your percentage is going up by 3.44%. But I just think it's an interesting data point when we looked at this as well.
No, and obviously that also, what's factored into that too are the special education out of district tuition costs, which are, as we saw in the assessment slide, basically a 92 to 8% swing. So Somerset's cost per student is higher, but its special education cost is also significantly higher than Berkeley's.
I did speak a little bit about the E&D, which is the excess and deficiency. The June 30th, 21 certified E&D by the Department of Revenue was $1,054,000. The school committee approved on February 14th to use $139,000 for the purchase of technology, specifically a Mac lab and a PC lab, a total of $77,000, and also contributing $62,000 in total to the OPEB fund. That brings the adjusted E&D to $915,000 compared to the certified E&D cap of $983,000. So within the cap limit as required. The stabilization fund is at $440,000. If I recall, I believe the stabilization fund also has a cap limit of 5% of the operating budget. So we're well below the required cap on that. The next slide is just a sum of where we're at with the operating budget, what adjustments will apply to that, or other sources will apply to that, bringing the gross operating budget down, and then less the capital, which is the net operating budget. The assessment allocation you'll see here, and these numbers should tie right directly with the assessment sheet. You should tie that right back to the assessment sheet. Shows you as a percentage, and it shows you the adjustments year over year from FY22 to FY23. And that is it for my presentation.
Do you have any questions, public input?
Mr. Tiaro, you had indicated earlier in your presentation when you were having a discussion about E&D that it was calculated at the end of the year and then it needed to be spent by the end of the year. I'm
Correct.
assuming it's calculated by the end of the fiscal year and it needs to be spent by the end of the calendar year?
Has to be spent by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they calculate it and you have to spend it almost simultaneously?
Almost simultaneously. Yep. It depends how quickly we submit our file to Department of Revenue. They certify it, get it back to us, then we can figure out what we can use for the fiscal year.
Okay, so there's a potential for there to be an adjustment before the end of the year, June 30th?
Based on preliminary numbers, it looks like there potentially could be one more adjustment I may present to the school committee.
Okay.
Again, I'm trying to utilize all the federal funds first, use any COVID prevention funds, use some of the operating budget. If it does, then it gives us an opportunity to maybe use some more money over to the OPEB fund or make some other necessary purchases.
Okay. Thank you.
My understanding is that the certification of E&D is for the prior fiscal year.
It's based on prior fiscal year data. Correct.
And so we get the certification at some point during the current fiscal year, and we have to be below the cap by the end of the current fiscal year.
That's correct.
Anyone from the audience?
Good job, Mr. Tiaro.
Compared to my first year,
Well, it was a COVID year. It was a COVID year.
Okay, so if there are no further questions, I guess we will close our public hearing and move on to the next agenda item, which is public input. We've had, there was no public input, so business financial discussion and consideration of 22-23 school budget. And this was, as folks noted, we were working as early as last Thursday on getting a budget together for this public hearing. I believe there may be some new information that we can share or some other considerations since that meeting. Mr. Sweeney?
Yes. Oh,
That's right.
okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Fenstermaker. So based on the discussions that we've been having, obviously, there's been a few positions that we've been talking about, namely in-school suspension and a way to solve our ongoing and increasing vaping problem that we have in the school. So with that, we had, as Mr. Taro mentioned earlier, pulled a few positions out a couple of weeks ago. We had originally proposed that the in-school suspension position, which is currently 2 days a week or 0.4 full-time equivalent position, we were proposing to increase that to a full-time position. And we were also, we had also proposed 4 half-time staff members to supervise hallways, bathrooms, just be that presence in the hallways around the school, ensuring that students were not vaping in the bathrooms during class time, during passing periods. We've heard at several meetings now in a row, and that is a growing problem in school. So we had proposed that. Those 4 half-time positions came off the budget. What I'd like to propose, a few changes, is reinstating part of the in-school suspension position, so increasing it from a 0.4 to a 0.6, so it would be 3 days per week. That would be an increase of about $11,000, but we would cover that solely through some federal funds that we have. Title IV would be one of the primary sources of funding, but not necessarily the only one. But that would not impact the operating budget, as Mr. Tennant just presented. The other, we did have a computer technician position that we're looking to have full-time shared between Somerset Berkeley and the Somerset schools. Originally, the original proposal was that position would be 35% of the time for Somerset Berkeley, 65% at Somerset. We would keep that position in, but adjust it to a position that is really opposite one of the technicians that we currently have here, Mr. Kuchar. Mr. Kuchar works, his salary is a 90-10 split, 90% being in Somerset Berkeley. So our proposal would be to have that technician be 10% Somerset Berkeley, 90% Somerset. So bringing it from a 35% to a 10% reduces the operating budget by almost $17,000. I think it was about $16,600, $16,700. Okay, excellent. So that was close to $17,000. And with those savings, my recommendation would be to bring back 2 of those half-time monitors, supervision positions, the equivalent of a full-time. And that cost is roughly $24,000, so there's about a $7,000 difference between the two. That $7,000 would be added into the operating budget. And to further combat the vaping situation, I would use federal funds within ESSER to install vaping sensors in all of our bathrooms. Even though we tried that with one bathroom a few years ago, and it was not very successful. I understand from a number of superintendents who have tried these that the technology has improved over the past 2 or 3 years since we tried it last. The sensitivity is a little bit better than what it was back then. So having that also would help assist with the problem. And I understand that we want teachers, we want to invest in teaching and learning. And we want We'd rather have money spent in classrooms, not supervising hallways or bathrooms. But as our students have reported, it is a growing problem in our schools, and we all know how unsafe and how unhealthy vaping is. And we really need to combat that. And if we can have a temporary fix of getting people in our bathrooms to help prevent the vaping from happening in the schools, adding some sensors, which will also help notify our administrators, our SRO, that supervisor in the hallways, so they can react when a situation occurs. And also, we need to do a better job of addressing the seriousness of vaping in our health classrooms. So it really needs to be a multi-pronged attack so that we are educating our kids for the long-term benefits of not vaping, but also at the beginning being a little bit more strong-armed and having people directly supervise and help prevent it from happening. It's a serious health concern for our children, and that's why I wanted to put that back in. But again, as I said, that would be offset mostly by the change in the technology position. So my request would be increasing the in-school suspension from 0.4 to 0.6 and reinstating 2 halftime bathroom monitors, making the adjustment of the technology position from a 0.35% to a 35% to a 10%. And then just as I mentioned, additionally, as we just learned this morning, our school choice numbers came in. Our FY22 school choice tuition coming in and school choice tuition that we are paying out are both favorable to what the information we received a year ago that the FY22 budget was based on. So if we look at this, there is $299,000 that we anticipated for school choice revenue this year. We learned today that we're projecting $408,000 for school choice revenue. And our school choice tuition going out, I think, was $225 is what we were.
225,000.
So 225 was budgeted for this year for tuition going out, and the actual number is 186. So both of those are favorable. We're able to look at the grade levels that the students are in for school choice coming into us, and also those going out. It's reasonable to think that the 61 students that DESE has indicated for school choice for us will be 55 next year. That would be including 15 incoming freshmen, if that's what the school committee chooses to vote on in a separate meeting. So it's 244 that was budgeted, and 186 was the actual. So anyway, for next year, we are looking at a slight decrease in the number of students participating in school choice coming in, reducing it from 61 to 55. But we're able to, based on that and the numbers that we have, project not roughly $300,000 for tuition coming in, but $350,000 coming in. And the school choice going out, even if the numbers remain the same, I think we had 200.
I think 200 to 220,000. We think that we would be a sending district at about 220,000, about a $20,000 savings from the.
Yeah, from the 244.
Yeah, I want to just look at the preliminary.
So that would be if it were 200 rather than the 244 and 350 rather than the 300. There is that a $95,000, $94,000? Or is that?
Say those numbers again.
350 instead of 300.
Just want to, I apologize.
200, oh, that's 150.
I want to just clarify. 244 is budgeted in FY '22.
No,
Our
22 or
preliminary
23?
200, FY '22 is 244.
Yep.
And FY '23, we have 225,000.
Okay.
So we would,
So it's about a $20,000 savings within the FY '23 if we reduced it by $20,000.
but we would go with the 225, we would reduce that further to 200.
Because we're projected right now to be about 186,000.
So increasing the 300 to 350, decreasing the 225 to 200, adjusts $75,000 for the operating budget.
So what I see up there is that there's a net decrease in the overall
By
FY '22.
62,000 if we make all those adjustments.
Okay. That's good to know. Let's see how it goes at the bottom, but my
I knew
other...
you wanted me to jump right down.
Yeah, but first I have another question. So are we saying that there is a $309,000 positive impact on FY '22 potentially, that you're going to be monitoring through the rest of this year? Because you,
Yeah, no, it's the difference between 408 and 299.
right, 251, is that right?
It's 100,000.
I did it wrong, sorry.
So it's about 300,000 compared to 408, about 108,000.
Yep,
And then the difference between 244 and 186.
About
Yeah.
60,000.
yeah, so in 150, so
About
100,
100, almost 170,000.
potentially in
FY
FY 22.
And that will just watch as we finish out the rest of the year.
Yeah, and we've been experiencing, as you know, we've been experiencing higher than increased costs for
Right.
for delivery of goods and services, but it may give us an opportunity to do other things as well. As we look at the E&D, and we're getting close to the end of the year, if we know we have those savings and are tracking all the other expenditures, salaries, and benefits, there's some opportunity.
I don't know if you recall, but I think it was 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, that we had at the last minute, I can't remember if it was Mr. Taro or Mrs. Albanez who was here at the time, but our school choice numbers experienced at the last minute, right before public hearing, the swing the other way, where we were experiencing
Yes.
less money coming in and more money going out, and it was a hit right at the end of the budget cycle. This happens to be the opposite.
2 years ago, it was Lindsay, it was delightful.
Those two?
Yeah. That was unpleasant, this is much more pleasant.
So, can I just hear again, what's
Yes.
the difference in the numbers that you originally budgeted for school choice in '23 to what you're saying now is a more reasonable number?
So for expenditures, paying for our students going out, we budgeted $225,000. So we're saying budget, drop it by $20,000.
25. 200.
Oh, I put 20, okay. So drop it by 25,000.
And what about revenue coming in?
The revenue coming in for receiving students, we budgeted $300,000. 408,000 projected for FY '22, so we're saying conservatively, based on the reduction in students, we say increase that by 50,000 as far as revenue for school choice.
So that's $75,000
Yes.
of additional revenue that wasn't included in the preliminary budget.
Correct.
And that 75,000 together with the savings from the tech position would cover all of the changes that the superintendent was just proposing, and some, correct?
Yes.
So now can you see what's that?
Any questions?
I'm just giving Mrs. Gagliardi out here. She was one of the people who trained. Bottom line is, so for Somerset, it would be a decrease of 110,000 or 1.09% decrease. In Berkeley, member community would be $95,000 increase or 2.9%. This is the total total assessment.
Maybe see that, okay?
Is that better?
Nope.
Right, so it
Oh,
goes
I-
just to the operation.
Oh, the 401, okay.
It's 4.09,
Yes.
as opposed to 4.7.
Right.
So Berkeley's operating assessment or total assessment? It's total assessment.
That's the operating, that's the total.
I can't see that. Can you?
You want to make it bigger?
So,
Would you let me know?
Well, I'm show how much is going to come off the page.
that's the totals.
Yeah, I won't be able to fit it all.
So,
Yes.
when I was,
And it captures everything, right?
so when I was reviewing this, I looked at kind of what we discussed at the last meeting, that being mindful of the stabilization fund that Berkeley has set aside, and the funding of that, the proposed funding formula, which was about 3% every year, more or less, right? If we took, and this is my calculation, if we took 3% of last year's assessment, operating assessment only, that came out to $80,767. And if we looked at the increase in, or the shift, or the increase rather, in net out-of-district special education costs for Berkeley, it's on that page, it's on page 24. Last year it was 68,640. This year it's projected to be 110,582.
Yeah.
That's a delta of about $41,942. So in my mind, that gave us kind of a, I don't want to use the word monetary cap, but kind of a range, a top range of where Berkeley would be concerned about looking at what your increase would be for this year. And if you add those two numbers together, I end up with $122,729. So prior to this new adjustment, I thought we would just on that with $127,660 at the 4.74%. But with this new information at the 110.54, although it's 4.09%, the way I look at it is it is within the realm of kind of the understanding of the formula that we were looking at. And then, moreover, I went and looked at, and I know that it's a long stabilization, you're trying to make sure that you can fund it, which is, I think, something we all have to be mindful. But if I look at the history page of the assessments, and I look at the last 5 years of the 2019 for the override, all the way through 2023, I actually put it in at 4.74, which was the only people we had. The average, and you add those up and you average them out, increase over increase each year, the average increase is 2.874%. I know that goes up and down, and one year we had a 10% increase, and Berkeley paid that. Another year it was a 4% increase, but averaging out, and certainly last year's shift to a different formula made a big difference. We're at an average of about 2.874. And I only say that because as a regional district working together, we want to be mindful of the fact that the steps that we're taking kind of fall in line with the expectations of the two communities. I'll just add lastly that I think we have to just be careful to look down the road as we try to be, the circumstances between the two towns might continue to diverge, and while I'm sure Somerset taxpayers are fine with paying less and less, I worry that I don't want us to create structural deficits in the town of Somerset support for overall education down the road. But I'll just compliment the budget subcommittee and the administration for their work on this budget.
Any further discussion?
I just have a question and a comment. One question is, I think we touched on this briefly, but is there anything in this budget that addresses potential increases in the food service for FY23 with the, and I know it's hard, it's hard to
Yeah.
predict, but with the federal government no longer subsidizing free lunch for all students, I'm wondering if we have any sense of what impact that might have on us.
I don't right now, but I know the impact's gonna be on the food service program to sustain that. One of the things that we know we'll have to look at is calculating what the dollar amount is for lunches, what we have to charge. We have to go through that exercise on an annual basis. Chartwell's is developing a draft budget for me to review. We'll look at that based on what we anticipate participation's gonna look like, a la carte sales, we'll go through that whole exercise. And then we'll also kind of leverage that against the supply chain, knowing what increased costs are, and also trying to utilize the commodities program that we're able to access with either chicken or hamburger, shipping those off to the production of Tyson or some other vendor that will prepare that to meet our requirements. I don't know that yet. And that's something I'll be looking at probably within the next couple of weeks. So, because I know we'll be coming shortly to renew the contract for next fiscal year. Next fiscal year is actually the last year, FY23 will be the last year of the contract with Charles. So, good point, because they have not approved the continuation of free and reduced lunch. That for the free lunch for all students. So what'll happen right now is that we're getting a higher reimbursement rate. That reimbursement rate's also going to go down. So there's a couple of factors that are going to be impacting the food service program, the operational costs of that program, and what the revenue's going to look like.
Thank you. I was just thinking, we're all worrying about hedging against inflation, right? I guess my other comment was, I wanted to thank Mr. Pearson, Mr. Fenstermaker, and all the folks in the administrative team for all the work that was done on the budget subcommittee. It was I think, a very collaborative process. It was a very respectful, collaborative process, guided by, first and foremost, our vision for our students, and then, of course, having to be pragmatic as well about how we can best support our students within our needs. So I wanted to thank them in particular for their work on that, Mr. Tarrant in particular, who asked million questions. One of the things Ms. Gabby already mentioned, sort of the long term, and one of the things that just occurred to me, and I don't know if I can answer this now, but as a member of the Capital Improvement Committee too, we've talked about that the need to replace the turf is looming, that its useful life is approaching, and I know that that's a significant expense. So I love good news, but I always want to temper that with, I always try to think about a budget as not year to year, but also midterm and long term, and I think both of our communities are facing building projects, both at the vocational level and middle school and our community school repair. So both communities are facing those expenses. And then
this building is getting to the point where we're gonna see increased need to replace things. Technology's ongoing, the turf field is a big one. So I just wanna make sure that we're thinking about that. Anytime we add anything to this operating budget, knowing that we need to plan for those expenses as well. So, and I guess my question would be, or my request of administration would be that if we were to go in and add back in some of these positions, I would love to see some data back, because I think one of the things that I think rightfully praised Mr. Sweeney before in his evaluation was data-driven decision-making. And I, anecdotally, certainly, and just in my own professional experience, understand vaping is a real problem, not just in this school, but in probably every school in the Commonwealth. But I'd like to see if we're gonna go ahead with this, how many incidents, how many disciplinary incidents are we having that involve, for instance, vaping? Or, I'd just like to see, because I think you used the word temporary fix, Mr. Schoonover.
That's the hope.
So hopefully we'll find a way to resolve it both preventatively and, through greater surveillance. But I would like to see, for us to get some data back on that. And similarly with the in-school suspension, if we could, I'd like to see the utilization of that, number of incidents, number of students, number of days. And I'd also be curious about some of the subgroups that are involved in some of the, the disciplinary data I didn't put to the state anymore. You know how I feel about that. I still feel, I feel like there's a lot of good work here, and I still don't think that we need a 3-day-a-week in-school suspension position. I don't think that 45 incidents up to our last report, frankly, justifies 3 days. I'm willing to keep an open mind, but I haven't seen the data that, to me, suggests that that's necessary. In some cases, we're talking about a one-on-one.
So,
But
and I think you made some good points relative to that, but that position, you're looking to fund the increment out of outside funds, not included in this budget, which was one of the things we talked about at the last meeting. If you really feel the need for it, can you find outside funding? So it's kind of, I defer to that.
forever.
Well, no, but I think that we also looked at, are there other ways to fund it going forward? So it's an incremental increase there.
Isn't that also some of the in-house suspension be utilized for other issues regardless of whether it's just,
That's what, yeah.
the teachers have enough on their hands and they need support to say, okay, you've got a day suspension for blah, blah, blah. And hopefully that will deter that student from doing it in the future. And it will also show the teachers that the administration is backing them up by providing this service.
I think so, and I think that it's really important that we see the data to see if what we intended actually works. So I agree with that.
But I think the 3 days, giving that opportunity for the teachers in the hall that have to monitor the halls and grab that student. I think the 3 days, you start with 3 days, can always go down to 2 or 1.
Mr. Chair, may I ask if Dr. Brailsford if she'd like to add comment on any of this?
So, well, first I'd like to speak to the DACA monitors. We do have some data that just kind of fell into my lap this morning. We do have 2 juniors that we're going to give them full credit for this, Delaney Smith and Tiffany Zahan, who are creating their civics project around vaping in our school. And they sent out this morning, they literally showed up at my doorstep on 7:30 this morning asking to wanted permission to go forward with some parts of the project, including a survey to our students and our staff, which they sent out sometime this morning. And since this morning, we've had 350 responses. And one of the questions was, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I don't care, and 10 being, and I want to quote this, I feel uncomfortable to the point that I do not want to use the bathroom. How uncomfortable are you with being it? And 54% of the 340 responses that we received are uncomfortable. 20% are uncomfortable to the point that I do not want to use the bathroom, and answer 10. So 20% of the 350 responses, so it's less than half the school, but in 6 hours of time we have the students today, that was the response from the students. So they're asking for this. Their recommendations, a lot of them say, bring back the bathroom monitors. They did not like the way that we did bathroom monitors last year because it kept students out of class for an extended period of time because we were only allowing one student in the bathroom at a time. There was somebody sitting in the bathroom and it was one at a time. One of the students actually said to me, I was out of class last year one time for 15 minutes waiting for the bathroom. That's not acceptable. That's a misuse of class time. But if we could have the element of surprise there in the hallways to just kind of appear in the bathroom, that's what we've been seeing success with the small amount that we've been able to utilize our substitutes as bathroom monitors. We do have substitutes that come in every day. There are a small percentage of days where we have, a period, 2 periods where they do not have coverage. So we've asked them to become bathroom monitors and hallway monitors and just circulate. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't have the exact data, but they're averaging between 1 and 3 a day that they're catching, quote unquote, in the bathroom. Vaping is not as easy to catch as one may think it is. They're small devices, but we've had success with the small amount that have tried to do that. That coupled with the vape detectors, coupled with this afternoon, I went through professional development on e-hall pass, which is an online pass system that we are going to start piloting in April. Our staff is going to be trained on April 11th. We're going to pilot for the remainder of the year with the hope, when we did budget this for next year, the hope that we're going to implement it school-wide next year. It gives us as administration the control to determine how many people can be in the hallways school-wide at once. So if we cap it at 10 kids out at a time, it will tell the teachers when a student puts in that they want to utilize the pass on their Chromebooks, because we're all one-to-one, they put the pass in and the teacher will see, nope, they can't go right now, there's too many kids in the hallways, there's too many kids in the bathroom. We can stop kids from, if there are perhaps 2 students that shouldn't be in the hallway at the same time, we can manipulate the software to make sure that that doesn't happen. So there's a lot of great benefits to it. There's also blue radar block benefits to it that we don't need to talk about right now, but it's a nice program that we, as I said, the administrators were trained on today. So there's kind of a 3-tiered approach to that right now, and again, we have a civics project going on that's going right at this as well. So so that is my pitch for why I'm really, really hopeful that we keep the bathroom positions the hallway monitor positions in the building. I also think it's a safety issue too in the hallways. There are students that like to roam, and just somebody being there to make sure that that they're there at all times. Can't be everywhere at all times. That's just kind of a nice feature of the hallway. So that is are they doing it, are they not? They're missing instruction, they're missing, you know, their education, whereas in school, again, part of our program is that when the teacher knows that a student is coming, they email the teachers, they email the entire schedule that student has for the day. The teachers send the work, and in some cases, the makeup work, because the student has missed other assignments. And we make sure that it gets done, and then communicates back to the classroom teacher saying, this is what happened, this is what didn't happen. And we've had success with it. The person that's there right now does a really nice job too of riding that fine line, which is something that we were concerned about with higher position. We don't really want students to want to go there, but we also want there to be kind of a therapeutic part to it, right? Like, okay, why are you there? She kind of processes that with them. You know, we don't want them to want to go back there a second, third, fourth time, and the students don't, because they are isolated for the entire day when they are assigned there. But we do, and I have had multiple meetings with parents who I say, okay, well, you're going to have in-school suspension. It's going to be next Tuesday. It's Thursday afternoon. They say, well, why is it next Tuesday? Because that's the next time to have in-school suspension. So, you know, again, in the meetings that I have with parents, these two issues come up in the baking 37 H3 quarter meetings I have. You know you have a problem in school. It's not just my kid, but I do know. We're trying to address the things, no ways we're addressing it. So that is just my 2 cents. And I appreciate everybody's work on this. It's been, you know, certainly a huge collaborative effort with us, with our central office administration, and school committee. So I really appreciate that as well.
Thank you.
I don't know, Sophia. Sorry. If you participated in the survey, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I did participate in the survey. I'll share my answers. I had said that I don't feel comfortable going to the restroom. I mean, I do go to the restrooms, and I just kind of try to avoid it. There's a lot of groupings. It's mostly between passing time, which is when you're kind of supposed to use the restroom, so you don't miss class time. But coincidentally, that's when the little parties in the bathroom happen, as some students have started to call them. And one of the questions was, do you feel comfortable reporting these vapings happening in the bathrooms? And I personally didn't feel super comfortable reporting them, just because it's been an uncomfortable situation, kind of like outing your other classmates who you might see in another class. It's not really my place to, like, I don't want to be disappointing my classmates, but it's also making me uncomfortable to use the restroom. So I think having bathroom monitors, in my opinion, would be the best option, because the substitutes are definitely helping. When they are outside the restroom, there is no vapors in the bathroom. That's just a fact. For example, I was using the restroom on the second floor, and there's 2 on each floor, and I went to one restroom, and there was a group of people in there. So then I just walked around to the other bathroom, where there was a substitute waiting outside. I went to the bathroom, there was no one there. That's just the way it worked, and it was more comfortable for me to go there. So, yeah. I'm obviously not going to be here next year, but for the classmates that follow me, I think having bathroom monitors is really going to help their whole bathroom experience.
Anyone else? I guess with that, I will entertain a motion to make adjustments to the budget for the discussion and Mr. Sewell's request.
Mr. Terrell, can you give us that adjusted operating budget
Adjusted?
number?
Yep.
The new operating budget number that was presented? Do you have it?
So the new adjusted operating budget is $20,177,828. That is a $67,272 adjustment from the previous amount presented.
Okay, and the capital,
Capital is,
because I think we have to state both in the
Yep.
motion.
capital assessment did not change based on adjustment. The total capital assessment is $2,176,648.
76,600.
2,176,648.
And so,
So the total assessment.
the total assessment, yeah, could you show that again? Because that way we can read it right from the screen when we say that motion. I'm sorry. I didn't write it all down.
While they're doing that, I'm just going to recognize Ms. Anderson for also being members of budget subcommittee. Valuable members of the subcommittee, so thank you for all that.
Sure, do you want to move on to something? Oh, no, just a recess. Sure. Sure.
All right.
Just a
Move to
second.
take a 5-minute recess.
5-minute recess. Okay. All in favor? As follow-up to our earlier conversation, I would entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2023 budget in the amount of $20,177,828 with a net operating budget of $18,001,180 and a total operating assessment to the towns of Somerset and Berkeley being $11,181,603, of which $83,79,308 will be assessed to Somerset, and $28,022,295, $2,802,295 will be assessed to Berkeley.
So moved.
And a separate capital assessment in an amount of $2,176,648, of which $1,606,996 will be assessed to Somerset, and $569,652 will be assessed to Berkeley. The total assessment is $13,358,251, of which a total assessment for Somerset is $9,986,304, and the total assessment for Berkeley is $3,371,947. That's the motion behind.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion?
Just on discussion, could Mr. Taro, could he show the recalculated assessment page? Please.
What portion would you like to see?
The bottom line, so to speak.
Let me just make this a little bit bigger for everybody. How was that,
That's perfect.
no, that's it right there. I think I may have to go up a little bit if you're trying to see.
Yeah.
You're trying to see this here at the same time. No, right there. That's it. Let's see if this works. That captures everything, and I can't make it any bigger.
And just could I just clarification for language, this does not capture the $75,000 school choice adjustment to the.
It does.
It does?
Yep, the adjustments, all the
Okay.
adjustments are made up,
Okay,
based on what Mrs. Spooner represented.
okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, on the vote, Mr. Pierce?
Aye.
Mr. Gagliardi?
Aye.
Ms. Andrews?
Aye.
Ms. Ensign?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Okay, moving on, student teaching and learning. Mrs. Schoonover?
I believe the,
Oh,
it's Ms.
Yeah.
Puccini?
Ms. Puccini.
Hello again. So we went over what we did in the meeting of the first Friday of the month at the last meeting. So these are just some updates for the past 5 days. Quickie. So the junior senior black and white dance was really exciting to get back to. It was our first official dance back after all the COVID regulations and restrictions. They had a great time, super safe, and just a great experience. Spring sports started this week. Happy to announce that there were over 120 track signups. The tennis teams nearly more than doubled in size, which basically means everybody wants to kind of get back into action, get active again, which is really great to see. Honestly, going back from the pandemic, I just thought that was a really cool statistic. However, we don't have enough uniforms, so maybe we can please one. All right, sorry.
I was paying attention.
I got you there. Also, last week, the Anti-Bullying Coalition, and on Miss Nassif, went to the elementary school to give bullying presentations to the 4th grade class. Those were very successful, well received by students. And the show choir represented at Andover High School for the NECS show choir competition. Did very well. There is MCAS testing for sophomores and freshmen happening in the next 2 weeks. Things will go smoothly. The water bottle filler that will be created by somebody's capstone project. There's been a lot of talk about having one, and it's been well received. I personally did use one at Andover High School this weekend, and it was very great, filtered water. There were multiple at the school. A lot of kids were using them throughout the day, so it's definitely being used in other places, and it's being great and used here. The principles of biomedical science class, the pathways course that we introduced this year to the school, will be going on a field trip to primary care to see a surgery, a panel, and other activities in the medical field, which is really exciting for those students. And the DECA class will be going to a field trip to the Cambridge Innovation Center to meet with venture capitalists, CEOs, and business professionals to learn more about the business industry in a few weeks, just to kind of make up because we weren't able to go to competitions, just getting some more experience in the industry, just to kind of get those kids the experience that they can do to further their lives in DECA and also outside of school. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have consideration of marching band trip to Hawaii, December 2022. want to come back to that?
Sure.
At this time, with mixed motion, I will read into the record a citation for, Mr. Richard Pierce. At a meeting in Somerset Berkeley Regional School Committee on March 22nd, 2022, a citation was prepared, signed by the members of the committee, and voted inscribed in the permanent records. Citation. Whereas Ms. Richard Pierce served initially on the interim regional school committee before being elected to the Somerset Berkeley Regional School Committee in 2012. He served as chair for a majority of his illustrious tenure, while also serving on just about every subcommittee at some point during his esteemed career. He also was an instrumental and dedicated member of the Somerset Berkeley Regional High School Building Committee. And whereas he faithfully and conscientiously performed his duties on behalf of the students and staff of Somerset Berkeley Regional High School, an individual with integrity and very high standards, who always put the needs of students and staff first and foremost. And whereas he regularly attended Massachusetts Association of School Committees annual conference, bringing to the school committee and administration all that he had learned with respect to best practices and potential new programs. He served on behalf of the district on the Insurance Trust Committee and represented Somerset Berkeley Regional High School as an active member of One South Coast Chamber of Commerce Education Committee. He consistently demonstrated genuine support for and pride in students of Somerset Berkeley Regional High School through his attendance at numerous music, athletic, and school-sponsored events during his long tenure. Whereas he remains a steadfast advocate for the education and social and emotional well-being of every student, and whereas his legal expertise was invaluable to many school committee discussions and fulfilled his duties with utmost attention to detail and a steadfast commitment to excellence, earning the respect of colleagues, staff, parents, and students. And whereas he is a well-respected, lifelong community member who served previously as a town moderator, and throughout the years has shown he truly cares about the town of Somerset and its residents. It will be nearly impossible to fill his void on the committee. And be it hereby resolved that members of the Somerset Berkeley Regional School Committee amend Richard Pierce in the official minutes, recording this expression of appreciation and gratitude to an honored member of the Somerset Berkeley Regional School Committee, and extending best wishes for all his future endeavors. And it's signed by members of the committee. So, congratulations, Mr. Pierce, and you will be sorely missed. Formality, I'm just going to adopt, I'd say motion to adopt the citation. Mrs. Pierce.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I hope my retirement from the school committee is more successful than my retirement from my law firm. One of the secretaries told me recently that she had been looking through, this was in the office where I am regularly, and she said that she was looking through some old boxes that she had, and she found a videotape of my retirement party from the law firm that was dated December of 2011. So she's actually retiring soon, and wrote on her card, "Don't do it my way." But it's been a privilege to serve. I've said for many times that I thought my two most important constituencies were the students of our high school and the taxpayers of both communities that make up our regional school district. I think anytime you seek public office, you're asking people to trust you to do a good job, and I've always tried to fulfill what I thought was the trust that was placed upon me by the voters of Somerset. I think the greatest experience is the people that I've shared this experience with, and there have been many. I can't possibly name them all, but Mrs. Gagliotti has served on this committee with me side by side from the beginning. We've worked very closely together for many years. Mr. Fenstermaker chaired our building committee, and I worked very closely with him. I've had great experiences with some of the representatives from Berkeley, including our two present representatives, but Mr. Larrabee was always kind of difficult to
You can leave it there.
to abide his razzing, but it was fun, and he was a great addition. But I couldn't possibly, in sharing my experience over the years, recall the service of both Chris and Marge Dilladucci. They served, I say they because Marge was always an integral part of Chris's involvement, both on the Berkeley School Committee, with the Berkeley schools, and with the Somerset Berkeley Regional School Committee. And their devotion to the DECA program was just absolutely extraordinary. They opened their home to our students. And so can't say enough about the contribution that they've made to our school district and to the schools in Berkeley. So thank you very much for that very nice tribute. And hopefully I can continue to help out in some ways with our schools here in Somerset.
Hopefully your retirement is somewhat similar to your other retirement.
I don't think so.
Well, until the election, you're still officially on the board, so I'm going to have some questions for you before your tenure is up. But I know where to find you. So,
Yes.
all right, thank you very much.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, as one of the Berkeley folks, I'm late to the Mr. Pierce party. I've known him for nearly as long as the folks in this room, and I know that he's very well known to the folks in Somerset. But I have to say that Mr. Pierce was the first person on the regional school committee that I met when we were embroiled in our override efforts. And he came to every forum that Dean Larrabee dragged us through. He stood outside in the hot sun under a tent and held signs, and I was so impressed with his commitment to a true region. And I feel like he embodies his mascot was alma mater. He's a true crusader. And I just say, as a member of the region, but as someone from Berkeley, you were incredibly thoughtful about our partnership, and I will definitely, that is appreciated by all of us and will be very much missed, so thank you.
And I shouldn't, I did miss mentioning our administrators, because it's, I've actually experienced the administrations of 3 superintendents. And I think Mr. Schoonover is doing a wonderful job. Our Director of Business and Finance, our Special Ed Director, our Curriculum Director. We've been through several. I think we have a great team at the present time. Our former first treasurer, I have had some role in interviewing and hiring, who went on to be our Director of Business and Finance, was a tremendous part of the team for a long time. So thank you all as well.
I know this is highly irregular, but if I may.
Certainly.
I had the pleasure of serving with Mr. Pierce in 2015, 2020, and during that period of time, he not only was he an amazing wealth of knowledge, no one was more dedicated, in my opinion, to the health and well-being of the Somerset Berkeley Regional School District. And as Mrs. Andrews had pointed out, Mr. Pierce was the most present and one of the most vocal supporters of the override efforts in Berkeley. So your citation, which was beautifully written, said that Mr. Pierce was dedicated fiercely to the town of Somerset and its residents and the students of Somerset. I'm the first person to say that he was also fiercely dedicated to the students and the residents of the town of Berkeley. And thanks for wearing the purple sweater. That makes me really happy. but you will be tremendously missed. And in my years on the board, no one stood shoulder to shoulder with the town of Berkeley more fiercely.
So, unfortunately, we have more agenda to go. So, okay, so right now we have considered moving back.
Mrs. Rausch. Oh,
Mrs. Rausch, yes, Mrs. Rausch is here. Consideration of marching band trip to Hawaii, December 2022. Mrs. Rausch. Yes.
Back, because I know that there were some questions about the trip. I did reach out to just to make up the person who's organizing this, and did find out, every year at the parade, there's about 38 of the states that are represented at this parade. Not every state can always put somebody out there. For example, if we decided that we weren't going, at this point it would be too late to add somebody else in, so sometimes it's not easy. Of that 38 represented, some of them are marching bands, some are choruses, and some are ROTC. I did speak to a band director, she's actually from New Jersey, but from a similar school system, similar in size, and economic background, stuff like that, and they went, and she said it's the best trip that they've ever done. They've done Disney, they've done Hershey Park, they've gone to Disney in California, and a couple, they did the parade in Washington, Apple Blossom, Cherry Blossom, there's a couple of them. And she said while they were all had benefits, this was her the best trip that she had gone on. I did put a message out, and there's a private Facebook page where there's all band directors on there from all over the country, and I put something out to say that anybody had ever done this, and it actually had more respondents of band directors that have done it as a student than have done it as a director, and said it was a great, memorable experience. So, I also I've spoken to a lot of the parents. They have a lot of great fundraising ideas, and whether it's from car washes to things similar to like the show choir did a winter holiday show, things like that. My concern with fundraising is, I can only hit up my parents for so many things. So it's something maybe that we could outreach to try to bring money in from other places. A lot of parents that work for businesses that they're seeing if they can maybe get donations from businesses. So I do hope that we will be able to fundraise. I don't want to have any child not be able to go because of the cost. And I do speak with the Friends of Music, and of course they always are willing to help any family in need as well.
Well, I just had a question on, and I think this might have been touched on last meeting. Will you have to forego any other trips to do this one, or is this going to be in addition to what was already in the program for?
I think that would be up to but I would say that I would not take the concert or marching band on another trip. There are some kids where there's crossover. If they did another trip, some of the girls in the color guard are also in chorus. Would they be able to do both trips? I don't know if that's my call.
No, I was just curious about that. And I just had a thought of fundraising with the nature of the trip in the Pearl Harbor, and you might be able to get some help from Veterans Group with sponsoring. Just a thought.
I'll be asking everybody. As I actually was thinking, if Mr. Pierce was bored with all his retirement and wanted to be a fundraising chairperson, right? Because I can put you to work if you get bored. Just say, looking for something to do. And also, the other point too, as far as I do like to see the department run as a whole group and do things together. And it was a concern of mine before I even brought it to Dr. Welford, is to say, okay, this group's going to go on a trip here, and this group's going to go on a trip here. But my concern being, in the last time we tried to plan a trip, which was supposed to be for Disney this year, not every group was accepted. So this is definite, we've been invited, we definitely get to go. I hate to turn down that opportunity.
Thanks for all your work on this.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
So I'm not sure if we need a motion, but We did, okay, so I didn't entertain a motion to approve the marching band trip to Honolulu, Hawaii to participate in the Pearl Harbor Memorial Parade, December 4th, 2022 to December 8th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you.
Good luck with that.
Next up, we have budget, financial approved transfer of funds, $30,492.21 from student activity agency account to student activity checking account. I think all of these were included in our packet. If anyone has any questions on these? Entertain a motion to approve the transfer of $30,492.21 from the student activity agency account to the student activity checking account.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Okay. Moving on to policies. Policies for the second reading. Mr. Pierce?
Well, we have several sections with policies for the second reading. I don't know if there are any questions or suggestions as a result of the opportunity to review these policies for second reading. I wasn't going to go through each one of them
Oh, no, that's fine.
individually.
So does anyone have questions on policies for second reading, MASC, June 2017? All right, so entertain a motion to approve on the second reading the amendment, adoption, or removal of policies from the June 17th newsletter as noted on this agenda to become part of the official minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion second. No discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Next is the group of policies for second reading, 2009 to 2018, NASC policy updates. Any questions on that section? Entertain a motion to approve the second reading revisions to the policies from NASC 2009 to 2018 newsletters as noted in this agenda, which become part of the official minutes.
So moved.
Motion second. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Next up, we have policies for the first reading, MASC, January 2020 newsletter. Any questions on those?
We do sometimes go through these. You'll have to bear with me. I had my packet, and in my dotage, I left it somewhere. So I have them up on the screen. The first is purely grammatical changes, just a couple of words. The second, on curriculum adoption, the same thing is true. There's just a couple of grammatical changes. The next one, which is equal education opportunity.
I'm looking at it too.
Yes, feel free.
There's just to be grammatical, an addition of a regulation, and a cross-reference, as well as some just grammatical corrections.
Do we add in?
We added homeless status in here, as part of, it needs to be included at this time as part of the regulation.
The next one is student absences, and again, these are essentially grammatical changes, adding guardian, making some pronoun changes. There is a change, a slight change in the dropout prevention provision, which now reads a student who has not yet graduated from high school, who has been absent from the school for 10 consecutive days of unexcused absence shall not be considered permanently removed from school unless the principal has sent notice to the student, and that student parent would join in.
And previously it said they would be, so it's a change to not.
Next relates to gang activity, which hopefully we don't have much experience with and will continue not to have much experience with, but it is a policy that relates to gang activities and secret societies. We reviewed this. It's largely new language, but we did feel it was appropriate to have a policy like this. More hopefully to deal with the possibility of so-called secret societies, but we thought we should adopt the entire policy. The next one is on prohibition of hazing. And again,
Just a removal of the chapter 536. And then change of superintendent to principal. Upon approval of the principal will be suspended from school for up to 10 days. Replace superintendent with principal.
the next one, again, really just abbreviates this policy with regarding to searches and interrogations, and recognizes that there is a different standard to be applied in schools, and recognizes the right of inspection of student lockers under circumstances where there's reasonable basis for a search. And also deals with interrogation by police, and says that the school has legal custody of students during the school day and during hours of approved extracurricular activities. It is the responsibility of the school administration to make an effort to protect each student's right with respect to interrogations of law enforcement officials, and then without much changes the circumstances under which those can be conducted. The superintendent addressed this in our subcommittee meeting and felt it was an appropriate change to the policy. There are significant changes to this policy, but we felt that they were reasonable and basically laid out a scheme that already exists. So. Student records.
Looks like just perfunctory changes until we get to the end, where we're deleting regulations that are no longer.
And the final one deals with student photographs, and this is just a situation of the school arranging for student photographs to be taken by a parent organization, a student council, etc., and a few editorial changes or pronoun changes, so minimal changes.
Okay, anyone have any questions on this? Okay. Entertain a motion to accept the first reading of the policies from MASC January 2020 newsletter as noted in this agenda, which will become part of the official minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Thank you. Next up, we have policies for second reading, MASC policy updates, February 2022. Any discussion on those?
We discussed these briefly at the last meeting. They're essentially policies relating to discrimination and sexual harassment in general, harassment of students, and we follow the sort of statutory frameworks.
I'll make a motion to move forward with the reading.
Motion second. Discussion further? None? All in favor? Opposed? Hearing none. And then next up, we have policies for second reading, MASC policy updates, November 2021.
These are this is sort of the review by MASC of the entire Section D of the policy handbook. There are various changes, as I mentioned in our last meeting. Mr. Taro had input and attended our policy subcommittee meeting. We made some adjustments to these policies based on the fact that they related to a regional school district and also practices that we've had with our committee. And the major issue we wanted to make the committee aware of is the issue of transfers between line items, and we agreed with Mr. Taro that we would use the function codes as categories, allowing the administration to make transfers within a particular function code, but come to the school committee for any transfers outside of, from one function code to another.
Any further discussion on this? Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Entertain a motion to approve on the second reading the revisions to these policies from MASC November 2021 newsletter as noted in this agenda, which will become part of the official minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. And that's it. So thank you very much to the policy subcommittee for all your work. You must have hit about 90% of the policies over the last few months, I think.
The majority of the credit goes to Mr. Pierce for organizing.
Yeah, it's a nice job.
Make sure it was done before the rest.
We did leave you with a few issues to address, you know, sub 501c3 status for PTOs and comments at school committee meetings and the policy related to interviews with teachers on certain issues. So the succeeding policy subcommittee can put those at the top of their agenda.
Okay. Maybe consider it. No, those are short. Okay, other matters, information, topics not anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. I'm not aware of any. Somerset and Berkeley pre-K updates. No updates? Okay.
I didn't get to give updates last time, so I'll just say we had a wonderful production of Frozen. Phenomenal. Did you get to see?
My friends were the directors of it.
Oh,
I went
is
to see
she?
the show
Okay.
once. It was phenomenal.
It was exciting. It was all 3 shows were sold out. It was really wonderful. There was also a tribute to Chris and Marge Goladucci, as it's the first time we've used the stage because of the pandemic in a couple of years and since we made the dedication. So that was really nice. Again, there were so many people there. It was just wonderful, and we look forward to future productions. And thank you all who came for your support. The only other things, we have finalized our calendar for this coming year. We start, our first day is September 6th, and our last day is without snow days would be June 16th. And we've also changed our start times. Both ends we've moved by 5 minutes, really to address issues that we're having with our bus transportation and getting the buses back to the school in time for the middle school pickup in the afternoon. That's all right. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Action items, future meetings, I had a few things that are out there. One is very important, insurance committee member representative, short and long term. Regional planning, which I think, there's a few of these will be on next agenda. The regional planning, the tennis court naming, hearing, and then we could continue to work on the track, on the Donald track. And then I had on here for the school calendar, which I'm assuming will be pretty soon. And the committee retreat. That's that on that.
That'll be at the next meeting as well.
Could I just a comment on the McDonald track. I have the plaque in my trunk, which I'm going to turn over to Robert tonight. If it's determined that we need a new plaque, I'd be happy to participate in a fundraising effort to replace it. So this will help.
Did Robin do volunteer to take that?
She actually asked for it, so.
Okay.
I think our facilities director wants to take it out and be sure that it doesn't fit and has to be replaced.
So we should verify the size and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
And they also
Fix
wanted,
it to her house.
yeah, they wanted to see what was on it, so if they do have to replace it, I guess they're going to replace it essentially as originally designed. Unfortunately, it's only, if it is off, it's only about off by an inch in one dimension, so it's kind of unfortunate.
All right, moving on. Approval of minutes for prior meetings. We had minutes for the joint open session of March 17th, 2022, and joint executive session minutes of March 17th, 2022.
So moved.
Continue.
Can I just make a comment really quickly?
Sure.
I read an email that came out recently about being able to vote on the minutes, even if you aren't present. So I just wanted to talk about that real quick to make sure that that's correct. Even if you're not there, you are allowed to take a vote on previous minutes.
Yes.
But I think that those comments arose because committees were not approving
Okay.
their minutes in a timely fashion. The requirement is that you're supposed to approve the minutes in a timely fashion or within a certain time frame. And some committees were saying they didn't have enough people to approve the minutes, so the minutes weren't getting approved. So I think a member could still abstain
It can still be
if
good
you
practice,
felt more
but
comfortable doing that, as long as there are a sufficient number of people at the meeting to approve the minutes in a timely fashion.
thank you.
Okay. So we can get a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. And I think that's our official business for tonight. So I